All right, here we go. Let's have some fun. It's an evening session, and I am lucky enough to be talking to Chris Hunter, the interim CEO of Bitcoin Beach Wallet and current co-founder of Galoy. And I'm very thankful and lucky that I got a chance to invest in Galoy previously. Amazing company. Chris is just an absolutely accomplished, super successful, amazing individual. He did the best job ever in El Salvador with the Adopting Bitcoin conference. It was fantastic. I'll go every year. And luckily, we have a syndicate opportunity for Lightning Ventures. And we're honored and lucky to be able to participate and champion him, what he's built, and the Bitcoin Beach Wallet moving forward. Chris, how are you this Monday evening?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I was doing pretty good. But after those amazingly kind words and fantastic introduction, I'm doing even better. So thank you for setting the table in that way.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for taking a minute and educating us and chatting about the Bitcoin Beach Wallet. So first off, Bitcoin banking for consumers and businesses in El Salvador, right? You think Bitcoin Beach Wallet, you think it's a wallet, you think it's just like maybe a simple phone wallet. Can you talk a little bit about what it is?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think there's a reason why people don't at first blush understand what we've already built in El Salvador with the Bitcoin Beach Wallet and also where we want to go with this new business. And in part, there's no analogy, or at least no direct analogy in the world of traditional finance, right? We at Galoy believe Bitcoin is money, right? Most of the world just doesn't understand that yet. And our whole mission as a business is to make it easy for people around the world to use Bitcoin as money. And our proof of concept, the first expression of that is the Bitcoin Beach Wallet. And so it's for both consumers as well as businesses and merchants to use, right? And as I think some of you, the people listening to this will know, most individual citizens in El Salvador have never been banked, right? And as you might guess, most merchants have never had financial services as well. And so what we've built is novel, and there is a wallet component, but it's much more than a wallet. But the wallet is on iOS and Google Play, Android, where people can send and receive Bitcoin on chain, send and receive and make Lightning payments, and also have a username functionality to send to other Bitcoin Beach Wallet users, just like you would do in Venmo or PayPal or apps that other people might use. But then it gets much more interesting because there's a complete Galoy backend in terms of API and other features that are part of the solution. And then we've also got a secure cold storage multi-sig solution, a novel shared custody backend that supports the bank as well. And so that gives a very brief overview. Happy to unpack the details, but as you kind of touch on, it's much more than just a mobile wallet.
Okay, so let's first clear the air a little bit. Your title is interim CEO, and this was a product of Galoy, or in conjunction of, like, how does that work? One of the questions from the syndicate was basically, is this a wholly owned subsidiary, or what's the relationship like there? And then how does this then branch off into other countries as well?
Sure. I mean, all fantastic questions. So I'll try to break it down bit by bit. One thing to keep in mind is Nicholas, my partner, and I went to El Salvador in August and September of 2020, almost a year and a half ago, because we felt that was the best place for us to innovate and also support the community in El Zante, the Bitcoin Beach project, with, build some pro bono technology for them. And I only mention that because the project to date has been a volunteer effort, right? There's been no legal entity. It's been, kind of a volunteer army on the ground. There's no management, there's no capitalization, right? And despite all that, it's taken on a life of its own with tens of thousands of active users and hundreds of thousands of transactions and real money moving through the system. But, we at Galoy built this wallet to learn by doing and to show the world that, we were not 5 years too early to build on Lightning. A year and a half ago, we tried to raise a seed round for Galoy. Sorry for the background noise. Tried to raise a seed round for Galoy, and we weren't successful. And so that's what brought us to El Salvador, in part to show people this technology works. And so now, it's been successful to the point where, Galoy's business model is not to own a bank or run a bank, right? But that's effectively what Bitcoin Beach Wallet is. And so we want to have it at an arm's length and have it be its own corporation, which will actually be a client of Galoy. So Galoy will continue to, support the business in a fulsome way in terms of our technology stack and all the services therein, right? But Bitcoin Beach Wallet will pay a modest fee back to Galoy, basically a software as a service fee. And then it will be its own legal entity with its own local management team, with Salvadorian management, its own capitalization, which is obviously the round that we're talking about here. And so, Galoy will maintain a small minority equity portion ownership within this new business, but it will be largely owned by either or a combination of the investors, which we're talking to now, as well as the local management in El Salvador.
So then how much of a responsibility moving forward with the project with that small equity position do you have down the road? I mean, because you're going to do this, you're going to replicate this, right? I mean, this is going to be global, because that leads into another question, which is why, if it's not just a wallet, even just as a wallet, we can't download it here in the US. So
Sure. Is
is that something that ever may happen?
Oh, it's definitely a possibility. So there's a couple bits here. And from your previous question, you rightly highlighted I'm interim CEO. I'm taking a hands-on approach in the early days with Bitcoin Beach Wallet to make sure it kind of leaves the nest and flies away from the nest in a successful fashion. But my intention individually is to step away as interim CEO as quickly as possible, ideally sometime in Q1 of next year, just to make that clear, right? So we've hired Manuel Ayala, who's the president of the business right now. We're in the process of hiring the executives who will report to him. And in the months ahead, once I feel like the business is on good footing, my intention is to step away as soon as possible. So that's one bit. The business here is to build the #1 banking solution in country in El Salvador. I say just banking plainly, right? Not Bitcoin banking, right? It should be the #1 Bitcoin banking solution. It should surpass Chivo, both in terms of serving customers, retail consumers, as well as businesses. But there's no reason why this can't be the #1 banking solution in a country, full stop, right? And so, we can talk about what that means in 2022 and beyond in terms of the products that we'll introduce in El Salvador. But then to complete, the answer to your question, there's no reason why, as we head into 2023 and beyond, Manuel and the executives who will be running the business themselves, they can choose to enter Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, take the business wherever they see fit. So, just to be clear, the initial focus will be El Salvador because we've got traction there, a user base, a brand. Obviously, there's a Bitcoin law that makes Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador, but there's no reason why the business can't expand beyond those national borders in the years ahead.
So what you just said was so incredibly exciting, and you said it so fast. I just want to drill on this. You skim through a deal memo, you look at something. The Bitcoin Beach Wallet, you're essentially saying it is a bank. You are investing in a bank. This is a forward-thinking future bank in El Salvador that is being first with Bitcoin, and you're going to just own it. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly correct. And to get a little more specific, so we've got the wallet, which anybody can download in country, either from Google Play Store or iOS, right? And that allows you to send and receive money, spend it, on-chain, Lightning, etc. And we'll have real products that will be introduced early next year on the business side, whether it's point of sale solutions for merchants, whether it's a bill pay product, which we can talk about, whether it's a remittance offering, which we can talk about as well. Right. But the reality is this is intended to be a full bank, and, get a little more specific there. We've already created the legal entity in El Salvador. That's done. We've already filed our registration with the BCR, which is the Central Bank of El Salvador. That's not only been received, but fully approved. Right. So this entity that you would be investing into is already stood up and is already fully licensed under the central bank in El Salvador. So it's pretty exciting, like you said.
So, that was leading into banking, banking as a service, traditional banking, building a bank. I imagine that there would be a lending component or other banking solutions. You just said it, right? Point of sale, merchant support, 360.
That's correct. Yeah, so Galoy's business, just to draw a distinction here, is to create software and then provide services around that software. Our business is not to be a bank in El Salvador or any other jurisdiction, right? So this business, Bitcoin Beach Wallet, will become a client of Galoy, like I said before, but it's the responsibility of management in country to introduce products, right? Whether for consumers or businesses, to maintain regulatory compliance, to acquire customers, to provide customer service, right? All the operational components that go into running a bank. Now, the advantage is we should be able to do so in a much lower, cost fashion with a much more favorable cost structure than traditional commercial banks. So we can unpack that if you want, but that's part of the reason why we're building on Bitcoin in the first place. We think it's the best monetary network the world has ever seen today, and the world may ever seen, and we want to push that forward.
So, the only thing that I can think of as far as a real disclosure here, and might as well just chat about it, is potential regulatory reversals of some of these, the recent exciting rulings. You're much closer. Maybe you got to meet the president personally. Maybe you shook his hand. I don't know. We were all there that night in the craziness. But are you at all concerned about, I think he just changed it, however much longer he's in, right? Another potentially 6 or 8. But do you think that this could ever be rolled back? I can't identify really another disclosure besides that, honestly.
Sure. I mean, look, there's the risks of investing into any early stage company, whatever it might be, right? Like you might lose all your money, or whatever the risks of just operating into a young early stage venture are, right? But like you said, putting that aside, I think the unique risk here that might not be common to other early stage venture investments is, El Salvador is the only nation state on earth that has a Bitcoin law where Bitcoin is mandated as legal tender, right? You go into any business in El Salvador, they have to accept Bitcoin as payment, and there's a risk that law could be reversed. Now, I don't think there's any risk of that happening if Bukele remains president. So it becomes a question of, is there a change of power in El Salvador, and could there be a change in the law? Absolutely, right? How do we handicap that risk? Honestly, I have no way to ascribe a probability to that. I'm not close to the president himself. I am quite close and have a good rapport with his top advisors and the folks who run the Chivo wallets, right? And like I said, is there a risk there? Yes, but I don't know how to handicap it. I would probably think it's somewhat low, but the short answer is who knows.
So the traction so far, I'm seeing like 30 or to 50,000. How has it been growing?
Sure. I mean, it's still pretty impressive in so much as that, the active user stats are kind of still up and to the right. And I'm really surprised to see that. If anything, I would have expected to have dwindled in the last month or two, only because there's really nobody, to use an analogy, tending the garden, right? If you have a garden at your home and you don't tend to it, the weeds come and it grows out of control and it doesn't look pretty anymore, right? But the reality is we're only just now in the process of standing up this legal entity and hiring local management and capitalizing the business. To say it differently, the last couple of months, there's really been nobody tending, to the education process of getting new users on board or anything in that direction. And despite that lack of tending to the garden, the number of users continues to increase week by week. The number of transactions continues to increase week by week. And so, that speaks to the fact that, this homegrown project, number one, just serves a real need for consumers and businesses in the country, right? And despite the fact that there's been no marketing effort, there's never been a single marketing dollar spent on the wallet. The logo to date is kind of janky and looks like it's something from the 1990s, right? Once we start to revamp all this, hopefully, it'll be a much different story, and it's kind of to the moon in terms of the possibilities here.
So when you talk about the different revenue models here, right? The merchant solutions, how does this differ than just a merchant using Chivo or their alternative right now?
Sure. Well, one thing to keep in mind is just like, 70% of the citizenry in El Salvador is unbanked. The vast majority of businesses in El Salvador, don't have any kind of, payment rail as well, other than just accepting cash. And keep in mind, a lot of these, when we're talking about merchants or businesses, these might be, people who are doing, a couple thousand US in turnover per month, right? It's pretty modest by US standards. And what we've modeled in the financial pro forma is an average merchant having an average turnover of 2,000 US dollars per month in terms of their top line revenue, right? But there's still, tens of thousands of these merchants in country. And the insight being is most of them don't have any digital payment solution to begin with. For the few who are riding the Visa or MasterCard or Amex network, they're paying much higher fees than you would see in, say, the Western world, US, Japan, Europe, where, typically the fees there will be, the kind of close to 1% range. People riding the credit card rails right now will pay somewhere in the 3 to 6% range if you do have that type of solution in El Salvador. So we can offer a superior product and still charge something that feels like 1%, right, and still make good revenue on the Bitcoin Beach wallet side of the house while providing a much more inexpensive and better solution to people. So that's comparing, to what solutions they might have in terms of traditional financial system. And then there's a question in terms of Chivo. It's Chivo on one hand basically doesn't work other than Chivo to Chivo, right? So if you're using a Chivo wallet to a Chivo point of sale, that works, right? It's opaque in terms of what the fees are being charged to merchants there today. And it's also, I think, highly uncertain in terms of how those fees might evolve in the future. And so I'm not particularly concerned about Chivo, given that the product doesn't really work. Knowing the Chivo management team, I don't think they're going to sort out those technical issues in a swift or fulsome fashion. And even if they do, I think the lack of trust in government solutions in country, country where the last 5 presidents are all either in jail or exile, and contrasting a government solution to a homegrown, private solution, I think it's a pretty easy narrative for consumers to feel much more comfortable with a private solution as opposed to the government solution.
Oh, absolutely. It was really cool there when you would pay a merchant and you would see them not use the Chivo app, right? That was great. Okay, so what about the regulatory and financial hurdles of operating in El Salvador? I didn't really see too much here. You start a neobank in the US and it's, licenses and status. Like, what is it like doing business over there and starting a bank?
It's completely different. It's part of the reason why Nicholas and I went to El Salvador a year and a half ago, is because there's an extremely light regulatory burden there. And that was attractive to us, not because we were looking to do anything malfeasant or wrong, right? But it allows actors like ourselves to innovate quickly, right? And also, to say the same thing differently, we would have loved to have launched in the US in 2020. Just wasn't feasible given the regulatory burden and the tax treatment in the US, right? And so the regulatory burdens may evolve over time, but as I mentioned, we've got the business already registered with the BCR, the central bank in El Salvador. That was a 3-day approval process, right? There's some modest requirements with respect to, KYC of customers and collection of data and maintaining that data for a number of years. But, that's basically the entirety of the requirement. I think the capital reserve requirement for a Bitcoin bank in El Salvador is to maintain $5,000 on the balance sheet, which is zero, right? And so, it's not that there aren't regulations in place, but if you have a reference point of operating in the US or the UK or Japan or whatever the case might be, like the regulatory burden is almost non-existent compared to those other jurisdictions.
Okay, cool. Just a couple more things here, and then I'll let you go. I wanted to chat about this revenue forecast here. And it's interesting being in the interim position, right? And I guess you got to get used to this because I have a feeling you're going to be doing this quite a bit. But, you got 370K for 2022. How does that line up with the burn and the expenses and the use of funds?
Sure. I'm actually, you're catching me flat-footed because I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but let me just.
Oh, I mean, we're ballparking here, but this is what I have listed here. But I'm just curious, how does that work with the burn? And then you have a 5.6 million 2023. It's hard to even think about this revenue, right? And the TAM, which I was hoping to close on, but what is that? How does that line up with a monthly burn?
Sure. So let me just kind of just tell you off the top of my head how I'm framing it up. We've got Manuel Ayala as president of the business. We're thrilled to have him. So Tigo, just a brief background on him to kind of frame up the cost conversation. Tigo is the biggest mobile telecom operator in the country. a number of years ago, they created something called Tigo Money, which was their mobile payments platform. Manuel was the guy who helped create that from scratch and ran it as general manager. So he's got fantastic experience in terms of knowing how to operate in country, how to create product, how to go to market, how to deal with regulatory and compliance overview. And so, there's that's one frame. We intend to have, say, a team of 15 fully hired once we start to head into the springtime of next year, kind of 5-6 months from now. But as you might imagine, salaries, even for top level executives in El Salvador, are quite a bit lower than, the equivalent in, say, a place like the US. So for that fully loaded annualized number for that team of 15, that's probably something right around $400,000, right? And then beyond that, the bulk of the cost that you'll see on the slides in the deck is actually related to buying equipment to create merchant point of sale terminals. In other words, buying tablets and maybe a small thermal printer to give to merchants for free, right? And keep in mind, most merchants have never had a credit card terminal. And a lot of these are very small businesses where we intend to capture market share by just giving them a solution at no cost. And that's basically the vast majority of the operating expense, whether it's, the employees, just under $500,000 per year annualized run rate, or, that lumpy number you see on the expenses is due to buying all the equipment to distribute. And this is where it gets exciting because it's so relatively inexpensive to operate in country. The profit margins are quite high. I mean, you see something approaching 90% margin in year 2024, the third year of operating the business, because there's not a lot of expense to run this type of business. And then, the revenue, particularly on the merchant network in terms of just offering a point of sale solution, is basically assuming a 1.2% fee to the bank, for every transaction. And that leads to something like $15 million in revenue just from merchants in year 3, which leads to some pretty healthy net income.
And I just wanted to chat about this language. You use the term community owned quite a bit. What exactly do you mean by community owned bank?
Sure. So, I mean, this is, context is important. And that might change as this business evolves. And so, with the bank that we built for the people of El Zante, which is spread beyond, it's a multi-sig solution where Galoy, my business, holds one portion of the key, and then N-1 is held by other trusted members of the community. And so this works in a high trust environment, right? So think about a place like El Zante, which is a village of 3,000 people, where nobody really emigrates and nobody really immigrates, right? It's not like people grow up in El Zante and then go off to the big city and go to university and then move to a different country, right? And vice versa, nobody really moves to El Zante. And so, to say the same thing differently, people have lived on the same piece of dirt for generations. Everybody knows each other, right? In theory, could the people of El Zante who hold the private keys, collude and run off with the money? Sure, but they'd be running off with their grandma's money and their uncle's money and their brother's money. And so there's a pretty low probability of that happening. And so it's truly a community-owned bank. To say the same thing in different words, Nicholas and I, with the portion of the key that we hold, we can't run off with the money even if we wanted to. We can't lend out the money even if we wanted to, right? And so that's what we mean by saying community-owned bank. With that said, as this grows or transforms into a for-profit corporation, it'll certainly remain a multi-sig solution on the back end, but it probably won't be held by trusted members of the community. It will then be held by trusted members of the governance committee of the bank itself.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that's good. I think that's good. So co-investors, are you talking? Are you dating? Who are you chatting with? Is anyone committed yet? Are we the first? Are we the first?
Well, it's close. We can call you the first.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Pretty exciting. I'm thrilled to have the support of the syndicate, Lightning Ventures. It means a lot to us to know that, and you guys have committed or allocated a sizable chunk to the syndicate. So we're very happy there. We've got a number of other known high net worth individuals, angels, who are very well known within the Bitcoin community, who have committed capital. I don't know if I have their permission to say their names, but if I did say their names, anybody who considers themselves a Bitcoiner would know their names right away. And then, there's a couple of family offices who are circling who I think are pretty interested. And so, we're looking to have a first close of, for the $500,000 over the next couple of weeks. I think that'll be straightforward. Just in full disclosure, we might choose to raise more, up to $1 million, and sell 20% of the company instead of 10%. And I think that'll probably happen with the second close in January, just given the initial interest we've had.
Awesome. Well, full disclosure, we appreciate this, and we're going to work our ass off for you, or whoever is there, right, with their investor asks, right, because we are getting married here. We are pregnant, and we are here for the long haul. That's for sure. And we know you didn't have to do this because Chris is no stranger to this, right? I mean, the list here of people that you've already worked with. I mean, Kraft and Kingsway Capital, you've gotten funding, you've known Oleg and Fulger, and these are all great people. Matt, TVP, you're no stranger to this. You've done this before, and I believe you're an absolute winner, and this is going to be a monster.
Yeah, I'll tease one thing out. We're actually we're recording this on Monday, December 13th. In 2 days' time, on Wednesday, December 15th, we'll have a press release announcing, the seed round that we raised for Galoy. But yeah, as individual investors, just
capital, goodness.
We've got Balaji, who's obviously the founding CTO of Coinbase, on our cap table. We've got Vijay Boyaponte, who's obviously a big deal in the Bitcoin community. We've got Brad Mills, to give people a flavor. These were not investors through a syndicate. These were just direct investors into our company. And so I think you'll see a similar caliber of angels also interested to commit, or potentially already have committed to Bitcoin Beach Wallet as well.
And what's truly special and unique about this is that seeing Bitcoin Beach Wallet succeed is seeing Galoy succeed. So it's everyone's interests are aligned here, and that's what's really cool about this flywheel that's happening.
That's right. And I mean, people should invest if they believe it's a good business idea, right? But you're right, there's the symbiosis between Bitcoin Beach Wallet and Galoy. But I think there's something even more important than that, putting aside my self-interest as co-founder of Galoy. Like, I think we all want to see Bitcoin succeed in general, and Bitcoin succeeding in El Salvador is a big part of that story, right? And so to say the same thing differently, investing in Bitcoin Beach Wallet, helping it become the #1 banking solution in country, helping it displace Chivo, that I think that serves the broader Bitcoin ecosystem in a way that might be more important than supporting Galoy as a client.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Chris. This has been a good half hour, and we appreciate your time, and we got something in the time capsule.
Fantastic. Always good to see you. Always good to
chat.
All right,
buddy. Thank you.